Hello again, sword friends. We're filming in the conservatory today and we're looking at a beautiful sword. This is a custom sword from Eric Estlund and it is a messer. So, what is a messer? A messer is a knife? Is it a knife? So, messer means knife in German, and although this class of swords is referred to collectively as messer, it's probably more appropriately called langes messer. Langes messer means long knife or war knife. And there are a whole bunch of these types of swords. You have things like ruggers, Barenwer, then you have the big, real large two-handed types of swords, which in the modern parlance are called grosse messer or Kriegsmesser. All of these share very similar types of hilt construction. So they usually have a full tang construction, so a tang that's exposed, and have slab scale grip that is attached to the side, unlike a more traditional tang that goes through the end and is peened on a pommel. So they have a hilt that is constructed much more like a knife, and they have this characteristic guard that is put in place called a Nagel. Now, even though the name is German, and we have a lot of finds from the German lands, so from the Holy Roman Empire and the surrounding area, and we have lots of written sources in German language, these are not explicitly German. We will have more videos in the future talking about the origin of messer, as we will call them. But these are found throughout Europe. So you can find them in Hungary, you can find them in the Bohemian region, you can find them in Ukraine, you can find them all the way over in Iceland. So even though we think of these as a German weapon, they are not limited to Germany, and they may even have been more popular slightly east of Germany, in more Central Europe. And in fact, that is exactly what we have here. So Eric Estlund has created a beautiful, basically one-to-one replica of an original find. This one comes from Slovenia, and he has named it after the location of the find, which is Ljubljana, so in Slovenia proper. So with the help of Peter Johnson, he has recreated an actual historical weapon that was dug up out of the ground. It wasn't completely intact, so he has had to do a little bit of interpretation. And this is currently for sale. And it is for sale for $3,200. And it is a bargain. Now, some of you are saying, you have lost your mind. Why would you say $3,200 for a sword is a bargain? And others of you will know exactly what I'm talking about right now. So we're going to take a quick second and discuss why I think that that's a bargain. So we're talking about the work from a custom smith. And that is completely different than if we're looking at swords that are being mass manufactured. I have here another messer from Landsknecht Emporium from Hungary, which I love. This is a beautiful sword. It's called the Gottfried, and it is a wonderful buy for, in the $300 to $400 range, and it is very faithfully reproduced. This is a reproduction of an actual historical messer as well. It's a more humble example, but it is very well done. The smiths at Landsknecht Emporium know what they're doing and have faithfully reproduced a wonderful example of type 3C messer. It didn't come with a scabbard. You could certainly ask them to produce a scabbard for you. And instead, I have made a scabbard here. Now, I've produced the scabbard, and the scabbard, to make the scabbard took me a long time. If someone wanted to buy this scabbard off of me, I would have to charge several $100s to sell them this scabbard, because my time is valuable. It costs a lot of my time and efforts to make it, and I put a certain value on my time. Do I consider that a good buy? Probably not, because I'm not a very good scabbard maker, so this is a very humble scabbard, but I would still have to charge a lot for it just because of how much labor went into it. Now, contrast that with what Eric has done here. When you're buying from a custom smith, you are not buying a model of sword of which there are dozens or hundreds of other examples. you're buying, in many cases, a single individual unique piece, just like an artist who has created a work of music or created a beautiful painting. You're buying a one-off piece which the artist is putting something of themselves into. So even before you start darkening that swordsmith's doorstep, you should probably familiarize yourself with their work and see if what they create appeals to you. Once that is out of the way, once you see their aesthetic, see what they're doing, see what they like, then it's a matter of seeing if anything in their catalog is going to really speak to you. And in this case, Eric Estlund and Winter Cutlery, and part of what we're doing here is showcasing what he can and can't do. Please make sure you go over and check out my buddy Alien Tude. He has showcased several of Eric Estlund's swords as well as I'm doing right now. And Eric specializes in reproducing swords from history very, very faithfully. Again, you can find custom smiths that can do all sorts of things. Some specialize in fantasy swords. Others specialize in, competition cutting swords, so swords that will perform very, very well and might be very Spartan looking and or have very imaginative and creative things. Eric has had to be creative in constructing this, and we'll go into that. But he has done his work, he has done homework, he has done a lot of research, which takes time and effort, and then he has put blood, sweat, and tears into recreating this, which has taken a long time. There's all sorts of elements here that will take time and effort in a custom sword that you won't have to worry about in a production sword. A smith recently discussed with me, who will remain nameless, that he was carving out the handle of the sword and putting it on, and it ill fit. It got glued into position and it didn't go into the correct place. And it was already glued into place and had to be completely removed and completely recarved and put back into position, which was going to cost another 3 days worth of time in order to go back into position. And that's just on a single sword. So the work being done in custom jobs compared to production swords is completely incomparable. You shouldn't be comparing them at all. So I basically never besmirch whatever price point a custom smith wants to create for their the work that they generate in the end, because only they know how much time, effort, and labor went into it in the end. So all I can do is say, is the end product something that really speaks to what I am interested in? And in this case, it very much is. And I'm actually amazed that this much sword is being produced for the price that that he has put out. So what has he created here? So he has created a messer that's very, very beautiful. It falls under the Elmsley typology. This is a type 5B blade. It is basically straight, and it comes to a kind of spear point or a spear tip at the end. And although it doesn't necessarily look like it, it actually has a false edge over this portion here. So back here, it has a more traditional messer shape, which means it has a basically wedge cross section across its length. And then when it gets to right here, the spine is pulled back in, and it forms a false edge to be able to do sniping false edge cuts and to improve the ability for thrusting right here at the tip. Now, I have already used it extensively for test cutting, but let's see what type of an edge it has been able to maintain. Razor sharp. I'm curious about the false edge. I haven't actually tested the false edge. Let's see what type of false edge it has. False edge is not as sharp. It still can cut paper, but it's not quite as ferocious as the primary bevel, which is very, very sharp. It's worth noting that he does have a secondary bevel. It's quite small on the edge. I discussed that with Eric, and he mentioned to me that the original was in such a deteriorated state that he opted to restore the edge of the blade with a small secondary bevel to give it a little bit of reinforcement on there. It looks like it might be just very gently apple-seated into position. and as a result, the combination between the sharpness and the amount of meat that it has behind it means that this not only cuts targets very well, but also it has a lot of strength behind it, so that there isn't a lot of risk in damaging the sword. Um, I'm jumping around a little bit here, but putting it back into position. This is the probably the most spectacular part of this sword is the scabbard that he has built. The designs that he has put into the sword is phenomenal. The amount of time and attention that he has put into creating this floral pattern is wonderful. It just looks spectacular here with this nice, beautiful aged leather finish. And very obviously, he has this buy knife in here, and I'm going to pull it out so that everyone can see it for a quick second. Now, I'm not a knife guy at all, and I wouldn't even presume to know what is appealing in the knife market or not. This knife, to me, this little utility buy knife, which are the type of knives that we see during this time period. So as we go into the latter end of the 15th century and into the beginning of the 16th century, we see these type of sets on swords. Again, you find them on messers, you find them on long swords. You'll find these companion knives built into the scabbards on swords of all levels of classes. The more expensive the sword, the more fancy the set of knives that are usually accompany it. And the details that he's put in here, the fact that we have this little chamfered edge over here at the end, the little clips that he has here in the spine, all of the beautiful work around here in the bolster, and then the stag antler scales that he has on here, which match the stag antler on the hilt, just make it a wonderful piece. It's got a lot of mass here, and I'll do another test. Unsurprisingly, it is just as sharp as the proper sword in place. So, you know, I'm sure he sells knives as well as big swords, and unsurprisingly, he has put just as much love and attention into the buy knife as he has the larger sword. He has this pocket, which is masterfully incorporated into the rest of the leather, and it has been reinforced here to make sure that neither the blade nor the antler damage any part of the scabbard finish as it sockets into place. And it's just a really beautiful companion piece. If I pull the sword out and I jiggle it around, it's not going anywhere. So it stays very comfortably in there. And unsurprisingly, when the messer is in position, it even if it were to slip, it can't go anywhere because the noggle of the messer keeps it in position. So it is always going to be secure while it's in place. The seam on the scabbard is very even and wonderfully stitched in a very consistent and authentic way in the back. It has this one single riser on the back of it, right at the point where the buy knife goes into position, and it's the wood core lining on the back keeps it, or the wood core is not exposed. It's just got this wonderful leather throat, and again the fitment on it is great, keeping it very secure, making sure that it just gently slides out. As to the messer itself, all of the pieces are wonderfully, beautifully hand finished, so that there is no edges at all on any of the pieces. This is consistent with all of Eric's work. I've reviewed one of his other swords previously. There's deep chamfering here in the noggle. The noggle is very securely put into place. There's a little bit of color here. I'm not sure. I'll have to ask Eric exactly what he has going on here. I'm not sure if if it's just discoloration that's formed there that can be cleaned up. So for a noggle construction, unlike a typical sword, the hilt is usually fastened by by being slid on from the blade side and then peened into position this way. In this case, I don't see any peen mark at all. He has polished that incredibly shiny. So very good job on on how well you've polished that off. He has some beautiful mosaic pins to keep the scales in position. So they're really a treat and consistent with the type of designs that we see historically. And then we have this, again, lovely chamfered hooked terminus. It's not right to call it a pommel because it's integral to the tang, but the pommel end of the hilt here. And then the blade itself is, again, quite wide for its length, even though we have a blade that's only slightly over 60 centimeters in total length. And then only a single fuller with his maker's mark there. And just for comparison, I have the other Messer here. So this is the Landsknecht Emporium Messer. And even though that Messer is slightly longer, you can see it's got a narrower blade, and it's got a much longer hilt. So it uses that hilt to counterbalance the weight of the blade. In this case, the Ljubljana has this big, heavy kind of pommel, which gives it much more sword-like properties. Even though it's shorter, and it has kind of similar thickness to the blade, this comes in almost 28% more massive, but it feels much more handy in the hand than the Gottfried, which feels like it carries more of its weight out in the blade and doesn't feel quite as maneuverable in the hand. So I've always said anytime I pick up this little Messer, even though it's compact, it almost feels like holding a Roman sword, like a gladius. This is a sword that fits the hand nicely. It stays secure. The antler feels wonderful in the hand, and you just it immediately feels active, but it has such a presence that it really feels like it would do devastating damage when brought to bear. It feels like it's ready for violence immediately. That's the impression, even though it's this beautiful sword that's ready to show your status to everyone as you wear it about town. Let's go outside and see what it can do. Ooh, this is beautiful. Hey? Not so much on the tip. Let's try it one more time. Yeah. Okay. Good. Yeah, I didn't hit with enough conviction. Nice. I don't even know which side I went through. Let's try that one more time. Scooped it very little, but that's still very nice. For such a short sword, nice and choppy. Love it. This is very hard cardboard. It's freestanding. I'm going to have to swing very hard in order to get anything to accomplish it. I was able to cut about 70% of the way through the cardboard, and then the lightness of it knocked it away. It's pretty good. Let me see if I can do it again on the other side. I'm gonna try a overhow. Yeah, the overhow pretty much took it completely apart. Again, this is very thick, but because it's so light, it's a little hard to transit. Something a little different. There is a false edge here. Look at that. That's beautiful. Oh my goodness. Wonderful. That false edge is wicked. Open it up, clavicle to rib. Gorgeous. Beautiful sword. Beautiful. So unsurprisingly, this is a sword that marries both beautiful form, historical accuracy, and function as well. That is why I have no problem endorsing the price point. I think that this sword by itself could easily be, $2,000+ worth of sword, compared to Albion type swords, compared to Valiant Armory type swords. This is a very unusual type of design. This is a very unusual messer that would be difficult to recreate, would require a lot of effort to recreate. And so you're talking about a sword that already by itself would be north of $1,000 to try and purchase. And add to that a incredibly detailed scabbard with a custom knife, a companion knife that's going to match the sword to boot. And you're easily talking about doubling the price of the original sword. So I think that this is a very fair price point for that Eric has put his custom work for. And again, this is something for someone who'd be interested in seeing what the artist can bring to life in the custom job here. And so I'm really happy to be able to entertain this. If I had the capital, I would just be buying this right off of Eric himself right now. But I'll give you a hint. There might be a sword that I might like even more of Eric's coming up in the near future. So thank you again so much, Eric, from Winter Cutlery, for letting us see this messer today. I hope this was entertaining for everyone, and we'll be back with at least one more review in the near future. Take care.